Much of the public anger after the 2008 financial crisis focused on banks and other large financial institutions. Many ask whether those banks were considered too big to fail and their executives too protected to go to jail. One of the documentaries nominated for an Academy Award this year looks at that question, but as Jeffrey Brown tells us, through a very different lens.
A number of banks, including some of the biggest in the country, paid large fines. But just one bank was indicted for mortgage fraud related to the crisis, and it was a very small one, Abacus Federal Savings and Loan, located in New York's Chinatown. The story of its prosecution and ultimate acquittal is told in the documentary Abacus Small Enough to Jail, which had a theatrical run and also aired on PBS's Frontline. It's now been nominated for an Oscar for Best Documentary. Filmmaker Steve James joins me now. Among his previous work, the films Hoop Dreams and The Interrupters. And first, Steve, congratulations on the Oscar nomination. What attracted you to this story in the first place?
What attracted me was, here was the story of a bank that had discovered some low-level fraud going on, and they had acted to deal with it. They fired the employee, they initiated their own investigation, they reported it to regulators. But when it got to the DA's office in New York City, the DA decided that the bank itself, the president and the executives in the bank were complicit in the fraud and even orchestrated the fraud, and they decided to then prosecute them. And they connected this whole case to the 2008 crisis, saying that this was indicative of what happened in 2008.
You have this remarkable family and the story behind the bank. Thomas Sung, who founded it in 1984 in Chinatown. Just tell us a little bit about the background of the bank.
Yes, well, Thomas Sung was a lawyer who decided that he realized one day that in his own community in Chinatown that people could make deposits at banks but not get loans to build businesses or buy homes, and he decided that was something he wanted to try to change. So he became a banker and started Abacus over 30 years ago with the express purpose to serve that community and help build that community.
All right, so I want to show a little clip here because your film is about the bank, but it's also about an immigrant family and a very particular immigrant community, Chinese Americans in New York. So let's look at this clip.
It's about exonerating our entire community, no matter what we do. Be it the little guy selling vegetables or a bank that's doing business. I told Mr. Sung, I'm glad they pick on you because you're a fighter.
Cyrus Vance just felt this is easier to attack, especially it's a family bank. But he doesn't realize Tom is not easy to be pushed around. And my girls, they're tough, smart, capable women, so courageous.
Although this is David versus Goliath, David, being Abacus Federal Savings Bank, has a slingshot, and that is, their whole family of lawyers.
The daughters several of them were lawyers, they were working with the bank, they got very involved in this. The argument from the family and the bank was, we're doing good for our community and you're picking on the wrong people, right? And you were sympathetic to that argument?
Well, I was very sympathetic to it, and also to the fact that they seemed to do everything they could to try to root out the fraud themselves, and they even cooperated with the DA's office until they realized that they were the target of the investigation. So nothing that they did bespoke a bank that was trying to orchestrate fraud or even hide the fraud.
The Cyrus Vance, who's mentioned in the clip, he's the Manhattan DA, and it was his office who brought this. He spoke to you for the film. For the record, he still believes that this was an appropriate case to bring.
He does. We interviewed him after the case, and he felt just as strongly after the verdict as he did while they tried the case. And I don't know, it bewilders me, I think, a little bit. I think that he really did believe there was fraud going on. It's sincere. But I do think his judgment was clouded by the fact that there was ambition there to be the office that brought a case against a bank in the wake of the 2008 crisis. And nowhere is that revealed more plainly to me than in the indictment and the announcement of it. He had the feds from Washington behind him, And then he also orchestrated this chain gang of mostly ex-employees, low-level employees, members of the Chinese community, chained together and paraded in front of the media.
But this goes to really the larger context for the film, and I mean, something we covered for years on this program, looking at the aftermath of the 2008 financial crisis. It's the subtitle, Small Enough to Jail, obviously playing on the too big to fail. So the question you're raising here is why this bank, or why just this bank and not other banks?
Yes, and you know, if he had gone after Bank of America, if the feds had let him do that, I mean, they would still be in discovery. I think there was a belief that this bank, because it was a Chinese American bank, there was not going to be any kind of political fallout from this. I think he really believed that this bank would roll over and it probably would never go to trial. It's interesting, the big banks were all offered non-prosecution agreements, right? They paid big fines. We bailed them out too, but they paid big fines and it all went away. With Abacus, they didn't get that offer. They were offered a felony conviction plus a fine, and they really believed so firmly they were innocent, they weren't going to take a deal like that.
So let me just ask you finally, as a filmmaker, when you're looking for a story to tell, were you starting off with the big story, you know, looking at the financial crisis and what happened with the banks, and this was your way in, or did you start with this small story?
Well, I started with the story of what looked to be like an unequal application of justice in America, being this bank being picked on. That was the initial hook. But the heart of this story is this family, as you mentioned earlier. The integrity, the commitment, the courage that they showed. It is really very much a human story about a Chinese-American family that pushes back and does not give in to this wrongful prosecution.
And briefly, how are they doing now, and how's the bank doing?
The bank's doing great now. They lost money during this whole period of the indictment and the trial, but they have rebounded since. Fannie Mae, the alleged victim in this case, is now back in business with Abacus. They're happy the trial's over. And things are well. There are even people who have made deposits at their bank that don't even live in Chinatown in support of the bank after seeing the film, which is really kind of sweet.
Okay, the film is Abacus, Small Enough to Jail, nominated for an Oscar. Good luck with that. Steve James, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
And you can watch Abacus online at pbs.org/WGBH/Frontline.